The president sending out a video. Did you see this? Of the Grim Reaper, with the tune and everything. I can't play the tune because, that's copywritten apparently by Sony. I looked at it earlier today because they came up with some clever words about Donald Trump and the shutdown and everything. But because the music itself is actually a real tune written back in the 70s, I couldn't actually play it for you. But you get to see the video, do you not? And this is what he sent out, all right? So he's making it really clear, by the way, to not just New York City and Letitia James, but to the entire world that he's serious, he means business, and he is going to make these cuts. That's Russ. You see him there. Okay, Grim Reaper, what did I tell you? And then they have the sombrero hats. I mean, if you've been following along all this week, you know what the sombrero hats are. None of this is, good. It is it's kind of funny, right? Like he was one of the Project 2025 guys from Heritage. And everybody was warning against Project 2025. I always was like looking at Project 2025 and I'm like, what's the problem? Like lower, smaller government, lower taxes for people? Like, isn't that what we want? Yeah, well, Letitia James and Kathy Hochul, their heads are spinning right now. And people are starting to kind of question this shutdown that Schumer holds a lot of responsibility for. The AOC, by the way, is apparently behind the scenes pulling the strings on because she wants Chucky's job, and Chucky's like terrified and he's scared of her. And so as a result of that, he's going along too fearful that she's going to point the finger at him. But what's it actually going to mean for New York? It's going to mean less money for New York, $18 billion less worth of infrastructure spending. Oh, Letitia. Kathy, I don't know what to tell you, but they're your own peeps. Tell AOC, tell Chuck Schumer to do something, would you? I mean, they might actually be able to help you out here if they wanted to. Look, I think that some Democrats are actually realizing, perhaps not fast enough, that they just basically handed the Trump administration one big old gift, and frankly, a gift for the rest of us, because wherever we can find needless spending, we should be cutting it out. This is probably not good for Stacey Abrams either. Here we go. Take a listen to what they're saying over at MSNBC. They're terrified.
The president put on a social media post a picture of Russ Vought and said all eyes are on Russ Vought today. And I don't want to oversimplify what is so very not simple with the government shutdown, but effectively you have an OMB director out of the White House who is effectively running the federal government and making massive decisions here. They could potentially cripple some of these agencies, which we should be clear, as he wrote in Project 2025, he has argued that some of these agencies are too big and have hurt Americans. And so from his vantage point, he has been empowered by the president to move forward with these firings. And then on top of that are the cuts, the budget cuts, that he has been very clear that he has the power to decide what projects get allotted money. And as Speaker Johnson said yesterday, it is a subjective decision, one to advance this administration's priorities. And just this morning, in a tweet, Russ Vought, he made clear that there is another project specifically in Chicago that is set to, at least for now, get withholding of funds, saying $2.1 billion in Chicago infrastructure projects, specifically the Red Line extension and the Red and Purple modernization project, have been put on hold to ensure funding is not flowing via race-based contracting. Yesterday, he threatened 2 infrastructure projects here in New York. He threatened 16 other Democratic-led states in green energy projects. And when we're talking about this Red Line extension in Chicago, I know most people don't live in Chicago, but for those that do, this is a 5.5-mile extension that has been talked about for decades, went through this contracting process, and is currently moving forward up until this moment here. And this was a line that was a rail line that was going into the far south side of Chicago, a largely minority, low-income population that has never been served by a rail line to give them access to the rest of Chicago. These are the types of projects that we are talking about this White House using the shutdown to halt funding for.
Yeah, and it's taxpayer funding. It's American money.
And it's been contracted and previously contracted.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe I'm being too East Coast centric. I don't know, picking on Letitia James and Kathy Hochul. Don't forget, Chicago's in the mix too. Okay, so he's going after a lot of places that basically have been responsible for causing this shutdown to begin with, and also places like Chicago where he's questioning, if you would, the legality of some of the hiring practices. We don't have to go through it all, but I played this for you before. The mayor, Brandon Johnson, saying over and over again, you know what? We need to make sure that we hire Black people because Black people do this, that, and the other. And, Black people, and it's like, whoa. And we've got to black this and we've got to black that and we've got to black this. And it's like, buddy, come on. Like this is, you just invert it, right? And you use another race. If you said we have a white person doing this, a white person, blah, 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 that would be a problem. So he's saying, look, you've got DEI challenges in Chicago that we are taking issue with. We're not going to support things that are not fair, right, for everyone. And so the Grim Reaper is basically coming to New York City, coming to Letitia James, coming straight for Democrats. And there's very, very little they can do. I mean, they can't do anything. They can't do absolutely, and I spent a lot of time this morning looking at this from a legal standpoint, trying to say, okay, well, does he really have the authority? And here's the reality. Yes. Okay. That's the short answer. Yes. Because it is now up to the White House, to the OMB, Russ Vought, to do all of this. In other words, they got to stay functional. And so you've got to cut the fat. And we got a lot of fat. Not just in the military, like Pete likes to talk about. He wants more fit soldiers. No more, fat cells in the military if you listen to Pete. But we've got to cut. We've got to cut more. I mean, realistically, spending this much, it's not sustainable, right? So this is actually a great opportunity. A lot of people have wanted to do this for a whole lot of years. Here's Mike Johnson explaining that issue of authority and just the reality check that these Democrats need.
Everybody needs to understand how this works. When Congress decides to turn off the lights, to shut the government down, it shifts the authority to the executive branch. That's how the process works. The person who has decided to put the White House in that situation is Chuck Schumer, who leads the Democrats, the 44 who keep voting to keep the government from opening up. They're voting to shut it down. So what happens in that situation? Whoever is the president, whoever is sitting in the White House, and their staffs at the Office of Management and Budget are given an unenviable task. It's a regretful situation. They have to then determine, since the spigots have been effectively turned off and there's no more money coming in, they have to then prioritize, triage effectively, federal spending. They have to look at all of that and say, which things are deemed essential and which are non-essential, which priorities, policies, and personnel must be kept to keep the government operating and which are less of a priority. So whomever is sitting in the White House gets to then apply their lenses of review. We happen to have a Republican, a conservative administration. We're very grateful for that. We're limited government conservatives. We think the government's too big. We think the federal government is too big. It does too many things and it does almost nothing well. And so it serves the taxpayers to send less of their hard-earned money to Washington and keep more in their pockets. That's what we're advancing through the One Big Beautiful Bill and all the legislative priorities that we achieve. But see, sometimes Democrats, not sometimes, all the time, Democrats don't agree with that because they love big government. I mean, listen to them. They want the government to control every aspect of your lives and they need all of your hard-earned dollars to do that. In fact, they'd like to take them all. That's what the socialists are arguing for. That's what the Marxists believe. We believe the opposite. So here's this situation. Here's the president, the current occupant of the White House, that's been given this opportunity by Chuck Schumer. And he's a limited government conservative. He's looking at that and saying, gee, this is inefficient. This is ineffective. And we'd never get Democrat votes to limit that because they never vote to limit government, ever. It's against their religion. But he has that opportunity now to say this is a program that would serve the American people if it were not funded because government would be more efficient and effective, and that serves everyone. So they're going to make those decisions.
They're going to make those decisions whether you guys like it or not, okay? You asked for this. I mean, this is your deal, right? This is your show now. Chuck Schumer, AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, the sombrero guy. I'm sorry, the meme was funny, right? Like it was really, really funny. I know I shouldn't laugh at that, but one can't help oneself sometimes. Anyway, it's like sweet justice for New York City. They're coming for him. Here's Donald Trump featured as the Grim Reaper in that meme. And then, of course, you have Russ, as well. Blue states are really losing out. Like I said, they're going to lose $8 billion in green energy funding, $18 billion in federal funds. They're looking at a lot of programs. I mean, it's sad too, right? Because the WIC program is on the line. We talked about that yesterday. I mean, even CNN is like, oh my gosh, like, guys, what are you doing? It's women and children. And I don't think, we got to be careful about how we characterize this. Like, on the one hand, you never want your government to shut down. This is not ideal. I don't love the way it looks, internationally speaking, but I also am very much a realist in recognizing where the Democrats are. And they wanted $1.5 trillion to go to illegal healthcare spending. And, they're going to tell you whatever they're going to tell you. They're going to try and say, oh, no, that's not the truth. That's actually a lie. But you know what? Here's the truth. All of that money gets divvied up out to the states. And all of the states can do whatever they want with it. And guess what they're doing in California? They're spending it on illegal migrants. And so you start to say to yourself after a while, gee, does this really, really make sense? I don't think so. I really don't. I would say, as much as Trump is cutting from New York City, get a load of this. He's announcing an increase in security. I love this. He's reversing the cuts that were made during the Biden administration, right, to Homeland Security and counterterrorism efforts. Hello? Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Where we're going to prioritize things right now? Is it green energy and infrastructure projects to nowhere? Or is it counterterrorism and security? I mean, that seems kind of basic. So he's up in the Homeland Security. ICE, get ready. You're going to have more officers in NYC, whether you like it or not, Letitia. Whether you like it or not, Kathy. Okay, so more money's going to that. While we get rid of some of the green stuff, while we get rid of some of the infrastructure, pet projects that got pushed through by certain groups. He writes on Truth Social just moments ago, I am pleased to advise that I reversed the cuts made to Homeland Security and counterterrorism for New York City and state. It was my honor to do so. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump, DJT. So he's on it. He's on it. And I'm sorry, but I don't know how they fight this. I keep saying that. They are in for a big challenge. Just going through some of the key points. Again, $18 billion. It was the first thing in the project, right? The first thing they did, the Grim Reaper came for New York City, but they're going after Chicago too, as he tweeted earlier today. And Vought is also pointing out that they're going to get rid of the $8 billion in other energy projects. The funding was actually earmarked for the Hudson Tunnel project and the 2nd Avenue subway project. Gosh, they're not done with that. I got to tell you, I feel like it was 15 years ago. My husband and I, we were looking at apartments, and every time we'd come across 2nd Avenue, nobody wanted to be on 2nd Avenue because it was so far from the subway, right? And they were like, we got the 2nd Avenue subway going in. Everybody was talking about the 2nd Avenue subway. And I feel like recently I was there, maybe it was a couple summers ago, and it was all torn up, right, for the 2nd Avenue subway. You were a little nervous about eating in some of the restaurants there, given all the tunnel work that was going on. And I guess they still haven't finished it. Amazing. So Vought is announcing that the freeze is happening there again at the Hudson Tunnel project, as well as the 2nd Avenue subway project. And they're going to basically say, listen, any funding that is flowing based on unconstitutional DEI priorities will be stopped. Did you hear that, Brandon? Out there in Chicago? Those days are over. Did you hear that? Mayor Bass out there in LA? Karen? Yeah, those days are over. You actually have to earn it. We're not just going to give money away because we think that this project needs to go to somebody because of the color of their skin. That's not who America is. It's never who America was. Why do we have the American dream? Why do we have the prosperity? Why do we enjoy the highest standard of living in the world? It is because of our capitalist foundations that they are trying to rip right out from under us. Why are they so mad? Because they want to keep it all. They want to keep every single thing they can. They're, frankly, bunch of little piggies. Yeah, that's what they are. Bunch of little piggies. We did this the other day do you know this woman? She was fired. I've almost forgotten her name, but not quite. Joy Reid, who used to be on MSNBC. And I got a kick out of this one because we made it into a short. She sees this ladies and gentlemen, is something that's just atrocious, that I think is kind of natural to want, right? And this, I think, gets at the heart of why we fundamentally have such a different view on these things, because it is a religion to them. They want all the government to keep all the money, to control everything. And you and I, what do we want? We want for all of us to have a shot at this. Because why do people work harder? Because there's some reward at the end. I mean, unless you want to live in some kind of utopia that doesn't exist, that turns into a total hell, and it's happened all around the world, Joy. Funny, she sees this as a bad thing.
That if you go back before the 20th century, there were no income taxes, there were no regulations on business. You could earn as much money as you want, leave 100% of it to your children with no taxes. Right. That's the world they want back.
Yeah, I mean, people want to keep a little bit more of what they earn. Can you blame them? It's called capitalism, baby. Yaha, okay? Capitalism. And that is what has made us who we are. So why are you going to try and take all that away? That's what they're trying to do. And by the way, New York City, I love it that he's taking the money from New York City, because that's the city that's about to elect the communist comrade mayor Mamdani, who doesn't believe that, you have a right to earn that much money, who thinks that there should be community housing, that thinks they need to go in and tax everyone who makes more money and everyone who owns a property, and they want to have community grocery stores and free transportation, the whole bit. Well, how are they going to pay for that? By the way, everybody's going to leave. Everybody is going to leave if they haven't left already. I mean, the prices in Connecticut real estate are already going up, right? Florida as well. Florida's a really good place to go. Well, we've seen that. That's been going on for quite some time. I want to go to the White House press briefing that happened moments ago. Caroline Leavitt is, sort of reading the riot act to these reporters, saying, listen, like, this is not an enviable position, but is the reality of where we are now. And so, sure, the president's joking around a little bit with the meme and the Grim Reaper, but the reality is that he's been handed this opportunity. And so it's an opportunity he can't actually ignore. Listen.
That this is an unfortunate consequence, but the president has described this as an unprecedented opportunity to lay off additional workers. He's posted a video likening Russ Vought to the Grim Reaper. So which is this? Is this an opportunity to fire more workers, or an unfortunate consequence?
Look, the president likes to have a little fun every now and then, and I think both things can be true at the same time. The Democrats have given the administration this opportunity, and we don't like laying people off. Nobody takes joy in that around here, and if you think that, then I think that's very sad. You view the White House and our staff as wanting to put people out of work. Nobody wants to do that, but sometimes in government you have to make tough decisions.
And he's willing to make the decisions, all right? Let's be really clear. He has no problem making those decisions. Hakeem Jeffries living out there in La La Land over on Congressional, on the Hill today. I want you to see what his response to all of this is. I mean, how stupid can you be?
At the end of the day, the public knows that Donald Trump and Republicans have shut the federal government down, and that they're continuing to engage in the chaos and the cruelty and the corruption that we've seen from this administration from day one of the presidency. Again,
do you dare me? You know where I'm going, right? I got it here. I can't help myself.
It's a disgusting video, and we're going to continue to make clear bigotry will get you nowhere. We are fighting to protect the health care of the American people in the face of an unprecedented Republican assault.
I mean, that was just great. That was precious. That was meme 2.0, right? Because the original one had already come out. So he's out there saying the American people know this, the American people know this. No, the American people don't actually think that you're looking out for them in any way, shape, or form. In fact, everything I've seen, and I've looked at all the poll data, is the American people are actually blaming Democrats. That's why you guys have literally no future right now. I'm looking at your poll numbers. I mean, this is bad. I mean, it's so obvious. It's like I could be a Democrat consultant tomorrow. I wouldn't be, but honestly, they ought to watch this show, because I think they would get a lot of ideas on what not to do. And it's like you can't sit there and lie to us anymore. We've been lied to way too much. And I mean, I realize that Jake Tapper over on CNN is probably looking for his next gig at Fox. Yeah, he's the guy that scolded Lara Trump when she said, "Oh, can you get it out, Joe?" He played that clip of her and then brought her on his show and then said, "Lara, you know, you're making fun of little kids everywhere that have a stutter. Did you know that Joe Biden had a stutter?" She's like, "I didn't know he had a stutter. I really think it's a mental decline." "Oh no, how dare you? How dare you say it's a mental decline?" And he went on and on and on about that. And then he came out, what do you know, with a book on the cover up of the mental decline, which he was part of course. Maybe he's trying to get himself out of trouble. I don't know. I do think he's looking for a job at Fox, which is partly why he's actually owning up to reality with Hakeem Jeffries. Here we go. The clip. Some of you saw this yesterday, but it's good. It's worth understanding how hypocritical these people really are.
Donald Trump blessed it as well.
So let me ask you about a provision that the Republicans are talking about quite a bit. I know you want to talk about, and Democrats want to talk about, extending the Obamacare subsidies, which expire at the end of 2025. But they talk about the provisions, and it's right here, subtitle E, and this has to do with the repeal of healthcare subtitle changes, and specifically what it is. How they characterize it is, you want to give health insurance to undocumented immigrants. I understand that's not really an accurate depiction, but what it does do is...
It's a lie.
It's a lie, but what you support does bring back funding for emergency Medicaid to hospitals, some of which does pay for undocumented immigrants and people who don't have health insurance. And also there is this provision, and it's not about undocumented immigrants, it's about people with asylum seekers and people with temporary protected status, et cetera, but about their ability to get Medicaid. So they're non-citizens, they're not undocumented, they're not illegal. Why even include that in a bill, knowing that they're going to seize right upon that and use that to message? I understand that.
He doesn't have much of an answer for that. The answer is because I'm a moron, all right? And the entire party is moronic. And we've got Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and myself, Hakeem Jeffries, minus the sombrero today. And we don't know what we're doing. And then we got socialists like Bernie Sanders and AOC that are scaring the living daylights out of us. And so we are frozen in time and we can't actually move. And so he just gets the upper hand over and over and over again. But, you know, he has to do this right now because otherwise, think of the consequences, you guys. Do you really want your hard-earned taxpayer dollars going to all kinds of other programs all around the world? I don't think so. But this is what would happen, okay? Think about California. Fox did a report on this morning. Watch.
Last year, the Golden State spent nearly $6.5 billion on health insurance for migrants, and through a Medicaid loophole has shifted most of the cost to the federal government. Here to react to Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Charlie Hurd and Griff Jenkins. Part of that, Charlie, is that the Medicaid is reimbursed 50% by the federal government. And when you go to a hospital, you have to be treated. When an illegal immigrant shows up, there's a pile of money for them to be treated.
Yeah, and of course, this is not a fluke either. This is not just some one random thing happening in one state, like a crazy state like California. This has been a central plank of the Democrat Party for years now. Everybody now remembers that in 2020, during the Democrat primary, they were asked who here supports giving free health care to illegal aliens, and every single Democrat running for the nomination put up his hand and said that they support that. And of course, this also comes after we went through COVID, where Democrats led the efforts in all of these big cities, including New York City, spending billions of dollars, billions of taxpayers' dollars on free housing for illegals. So this is not some random thing. This is actually part of their intentional policies.
It's true, right? And so you think about it, and what about everyday Americans that are actually going to be suffering as a result of this? I mean, they're sitting there saying, well, what about me? What about us? Like, what about everyday folks that deserve to have some of this? I mean, this is the question they're asking right now, and we've seen this actually all over TikTok, all over Twitter. Let me see if I have a good one to show you right now because it's worth watching. Hey, Dems, you want to know why your polls are so low? Listen to this lady.
So the Democrats want to give away $1.4 billion of free money to the immigrants for health care. And if the other side don't agree with it, they talking about shutting down the government. Why the do you fight so hard for everybody but your own people? What about us?
What about us? That's what everybody's asking. That's why your polls keep tanking. It's true. I mean, that is the crux of the issue here. I mean, you're not standing up for the people that really count. And it's not that, let's not be cruel. Like, we get it. You know what? We're a country of immigrants. My ancestors came here from Ireland. Everybody came here from somewhere. But they came here legally, all right? And it wasn't easy. And I went through the sob story the other day about, how my grandmother died. Great-great-grandmother, because we're talking about potato famine years, but she died, and she had these two little kids, because, like coming over on those ships, it wasn't easy, and she had these two little kids, and the great-great-great-grandfather had to go and work in the mill, the Amoskeag Mills up in New Hampshire, and so the kids got put in an orphanage. And they, my mom's mom, let me get this right, my mom's mom, there we go, her grandmother, grew up in an orphanage. She said, my grandmother never really hugged us. She didn't really know how to do that. Her mom was really insistent on always hugging her kids. So, my mom was super affectionate because she wanted to break that tradition. But when you grow up in an orphanage, right, but that was part of what happened, okay? So, yeah, there was a system. I mean, maybe not, nobody wants to be in an orphanage, but, you weren't going to the Roosevelt Hotel either, right? So I think that things were hard for immigrants that came here to this country, and I think things are still hard. And, I don't think any of us are heartless. This is where community and churches and all of this really can come into play, but we're also realists. You just can't keep inviting people here, okay? If you don't have any kind of plan. Well, they had a plan. I mean, their plan was, bring them one, bring them all. And then we're just going to give them stuff. And then they're going to want more stuff to be given. And a lot of them come from countries like Venezuela, for example, where they're used to that. You just wait for somebody to hand something to you. And then you can remake the United States of America into the socialist dream that AOC has somewhere in that very, very small brain of hers. We don't want that. We're not going to stand for it. And neither is Donald Trump.